Hey everybody, and welcome to my second Inktober showcase. If you haven't seen any of my videos before or my previous Inktober video, I am doing a Friday showcase for every week of Inktober, where I pick my favorite prompt, which I'm following Jake Parker's official prompts, and I will record the process of that prompt. So the prompt that was my favorite for this week was from day 12, which was actually yesterday, Thursday's prompt, and that was shattered. So as soon as I seen that word, I automatically knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I wanted to do this girl looking in a shattered mirror. And actually this idea was inspired by Kat Velk, who originally did this, or at least was the first person I've seen who did this. So I will link her video in the description. So the supplies that I'm using are actually the Staedtler Mars Lumograph pencils. I use F and 2B. I decided that my mechanical pencil was just a little bit too rough and I was kind of having a blocked day and couldn't get my lines right. I'm also using the Staedtler pigment liners in 0.1, 0.3, 0.5, and 0.7 millimeter, as well as just an old eraser. I'm not sure of the brand. My Uni Posca pen, which is also 0.7 millimeters. And I'm going to be using that for highlights and white details. I am also going to be using Black India ink by Daler Rowney. As well as a couple paintbrushes from Daler Rowney. There's a number 1 liner and a number 4, I want to say filbert, I could be wrong. I'm still learning the terminology for paintbrushes because of course the terminology for art supplies have to be so complicated. I am also going to be using my Derwent Inktense pencils to color her in. My Magic Fly water brush pens, as well as a clear Wink of Stella brush pen. So aside from the main materials I'm going to be using, I'm also going to be using a pair of scissors and just a cheap stick of Elmer's glue. And I actually believe I got these from the dollar store, and it is awesome glue. You'll see me fight with it later on in the video. So this is the reference picture that I used. I used the top third hairstyle for her, and I used that because I just absolutely suck at hair. So I'm going in with an F pencil, and I'm just sketching the rough outline. And you'll see that I still struggle a lot with the lips. I don't even know how many times I change it throughout this video. So if you watched my previous video, you could probably tell that it's taking me a lot longer to sketch this one out than it did the last one, and that's because I felt like I just couldn't draw yesterday, and it took me a lot longer. This was actually my third attempt at doing this image because I knew somewhat in my head how I wanted her to look, and I just could not get that down on the paper, and it was just so frustrating. But I'm so glad that I persevered and kept trying because I eventually did figure it out. So once I got that mouth in there to where I wanted it, the rest just kind of fell into place, and I automatically just fell in love with that expression. So next I move on to doing her hair. And I switched to my 2B pencil just so the lines were a little bit differentiated from her face lines, just so I could tell which lines were which and not get them confused when I go back in later to ink the image. So once I'm happy with her head, I go back in on her upper body and start drawing in around there. And I originally pictured her in kind of a, almost like a prom dress style top, but after drawing it in, I just didn't like the looks of it, and it didn't seem to fit the image. So I actually ended up going with a shoulderless sweater, and I decided that I liked that a lot better. And actually the sweater was inspired by a sweater that I used to have, and it was actually one of my favorites, but unfortunately I outgrew it. So next I'm going in and I'm finishing out her hair, which I can't say I love it, but I can notice that I'm slowly getting better at it. So now I'm going in with a ruler and just framing her because she's going to be looking in a mirror, so I figured the mirror should have a frame and it would kind of help with the image. So next I'm going in with my 0.1 pigment liner, and I'm just going to ink the whole image before erasing it. And I just use the 0.1 because I can always go over my lines and make them thicker if I need to. But I just use the 0.1 just so I can get rid of the pencil and actually go in and add the details later on. So I definitely think I should start watching some videos on drawing hair. If any of you watching this have any recommendations on anybody who does good drawing lessons, especially with characters, I would be forever grateful because I need all the help that I can get. So after erasing all the lines, I switched to my 0.7 pigment liner, and I'm going in and outlining her hair because I wanted her hair to look really bold. I'm also adding some extra lines to make her hair look textured, and I feel like it's a little bit too much, but thankfully when she's colored she does look a lot better. So I also do her mouth, eyebrows, and eyes with the 0.7, as well as her shirt. And then I think I switched to the 0.5 for her. Oh, no, I lost that. I did use the 0.5 on her skin to kind of make her skin look thicker, but I lost a clip of that. So now I'm just going in with the India ink and doing the background, and I gotta say that ink is really tricky to work with. Slowly getting used to it and getting better with it, but it's a little scary how permanent it is and how easily it could mess you up. But yes, I lost a clip from before when I finished the line work on her, and I decided to kind of put some texture in her eyes with the pens, and I didn't like that, so I went over her eyes with the Posca marker, and here I just decided to go over them completely and kind of start from scratch because it was really bothering me. So now I'm going to color in the border, and then I'll go back in with my Sharpie and my pigment liners to get rid of any of the white spots that I left in around her eyes after my little mistake there. And that's one thing I really enjoy about art too, is fixing mistakes when you make them, because I feel like it really makes you grow as an artist. And I was definitely not ready to scrap this piece, so I'm lucky and very happy that I was able to save it. So now I'm just going in with my 0.1 and just creating some lines to suggest shadowing. And you know, if it weren't for Inktober, I probably wouldn't do this, but since I'm trying to take a black and white image every day before I color it, I decided that it really needs that little bit of extra interest to the image. So here I'm using my X-Acto knife to kind of cut her out of the frame, and I wish I could have gotten my husband to do this, but he wasn't home. He has a really sharp knife and a really good eye for detail, so he would have been able to do it a lot better than I did, but I'm still quite happy with the outcome. So then I'm going to go back in with my Sharpie, and I'm just going to get rid of any of the white fragmented pieces of the paper that were left from trimming it. And then I'm going to go in with my trimmer, and I'm just going to trim the outside of the image again to get rid of that white fragmented paper, and because I wanted the image to be a little bit smaller so it didn't completely fill up the frame. I'm just going to do the same thing and get rid of any white that's left around that, and then we're going to go in and color her. So like my last Inktober showcase, I am going to show the colors just because I don't know, I like to do that because it's just nice to know the colors, especially if you're watching, and then it saves me from having to answer anybody who is actually interested in the colors. So I'm using the Matter Brown to create my shadows in her hair, and then I go back in with the Shiraz to blend from the shadows into where the highlights are going to be, and then I use my Hot Red to fill in all of the highlights. And then when I'm working with my Inktense pencils, I always start from the lighter areas and work my way into the darker areas. I just find that way works best for me. I've seen that the majority of people use them like that, but I actually have seen a few people who will work from the darkness into the lightness, like all the time. And I'm not sure how they do that because mine just always turns out super muddy. So I added in another blue here for her shirt. I used deep indigo just for her straps here because I wanted them to be a completely different shade of blue. And then I take my iron blue for my shadows, sea blue for my medium tone, and then iris blue for my lightest areas. So next with her eyes, I used the iron green and the teal green, and it wasn't until I did her eyes that I realized that painting over Posca pen is not fun. I just didn't like the way it looked compared to how it looks on the paper. So next I'm going in with her skin, and I'm going to use the Baked Earth, and I'm just going to use my water brush to pull it off of my pencil like I did in my previous Inktober video. And I do that just because I find that it gives a bit of a smoother feel, and then you can get pretty much just the right amount that you're looking for on the image. So I'm going to go back in with my Baked Earth and do a second layer just to kind of create a mid-tone for the shadows. And then after that I go back in with the Saddle Brown to create even more shadows. And then I use the Scarlet Pink to add some blush. And then looking at it, I decided that the eyes needed a little bit more, so I added in some deep indigo just to kind of give them a little bit more interest. And then I decided to use Payne's Gray to give both the teeth and the eye whites a little bit of shadow as well, just so they weren't just completely white. So after doing that, I let it dry, and then the fun part. I glued the frame on another piece of the Canson mixed media paper. And then after I was happy with the frame, I decided to cut this image up because I didn't like it anymore. No, I'm just kidding. But this part actually did kind of make me nervous, but I'm super excited with the results, and I actually want to do another piece like this in the future, I think. So once I have all my pieces, oh, I apologize for that. Once I have all my pieces, I put some glue on the rest of the page, and then I go to work on quickly putting the pieces in. And I wish I would have planned this out a little bit before I put the glue in, but thankfully I was able to kind of fight with the glue a little bit to move the pieces, and you can kind of see that I really have to fight. Like, I have this sped up, and when I'm pushing the paper, it actually looks like I'm doing it in slow motion. So once I'm happy with where the pieces are, I glue any little pieces that are sticking up. And then I go in with my Posca pen to kind of create some reflective lines to make it look like a mirror. So it could look like she's either trapped inside a mirror or she's looking into a mirror. And then also I'm still trying to add a glitter effect to every one of my Inktobers. So for this one I decided to pretty much do the whole image because I figured that the Wink of Stella pen would make it look even more reflective and like glass, and this is probably my absolute favorite Inktober so far. We put in a few last minute details such as the day and the prompt and the date. And then I also go back in and add some white to her eyes, I think. There we go. And that little bit of white to her eyes really makes her look even so much more alive. I am just super excited with this piece, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will see you in my next Inktober video.